Do you have one of those for that one?
First order of business is to approve the minutes of November 7th, 2023. I'd like a motion.
I move that we approve the minutes of November 7th, 2023.
Do we hear a second?
I'll second.
Motion made and seconded to approve the minutes of November 7th, 2023. Any further discussion, corrections, deletions, omissions, et cetera, et cetera? Seeing none, everybody's in agreement, would say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, nay. Motion carries. Additions to the agenda for routine administrative matters and the pressing matters that will require ratification and review and future meeting. We have two. One will be a description of the survey that's been going in process and a update on the solar array in the pit. Anyone else have anything? Scott?
No, those were the two, Peter, thank you.
Oh, no. Hey, public comment on items that are not on the agenda. Anyone? Going once? Sold. Move right along. Well, it's going to be a quick meeting time. Good. Manager report.
So a few things. So we're finishing up leaf collection, even though we stopped on the 15th. We've been around a few more times. So folks, from now on, please take your leaves to the recycling center. Don't leave them back out in your clear bags.
Thanks.
They've done a couple more courtesy runs for town, but I think at this point, we're ready for full winter operations. So appreciate if you do still have some fall cleanup at your house, that we are open at the recycling center to take your materials there. The Parade of Lights is coming up. It's Saturday the 9th, I believe. 5 o'clock, which is a fun event, nice community event. So hopefully folks can make it down and visit some merchants, and let's hope the weather cooperates so people can come out and enjoy what's a nice event. That's a couple weeks from now, since we won't be meeting. We'll be meeting again on the 5th. So certainly we want folks to come out and enjoy that part of the holiday season. The sidewalk project that we started on Pine Street, we didn't finish all of the work, but we did finish up to the work that we had anticipated. So we removed forms and sort of cleaned up this week. So that work will be suspended until the spring. The contractor will continue to hold his price on that. The other project work that we still don't have complete are the asphalt sidewalks in Saxon's River. The asphalt plants are staying open an extra week, but in talking with Jeremy at Springfield, he still is not caught up on his regular street paving, so it does not appear that he's going to get to our asphalt paving in time to get that sidewalk work done as we had hoped. He's also holding his price, so we'll have that as holdover work for the spring as well. And then we are done removing debris and material out of the Williams River area in and around the Bartonsville Bridge. I think for the most part, it looks successful. We have a nice pile of gravel that we will hopefully crush next year and potentially use as base material if we decide to do the Route 121 paving for areas that we have to do street improvements out there on 121. So it gives us a nice pile of material to work with. And I've been out a couple times. Sue goes out quite a bit, and I'm sure she can give a better update, but it certainly looks good, the work that they did. And I think it's definitely going to help sort of the way the floodplain works in that area. So overall, I think it was a good project and very pleased that we could get it done and hopefully alleviate a future problem.
So it brought it back basically to pre-Irene, so even more so because the railroad dug a lot of the stuff out of the river as well. That we didn't do, we just took the stuff they had piled up.
So it's a good project in a couple of ways for us. Certainly we can use the gravel in other projects, so the material that we took out will not go to waste. And then we are going to apply to FEMA, considering that that's debris removal to protect the structure. So we're hopeful that they'll see that as a reimbursable expense, and hopefully we'll be able to get that paid for as well.
Scott, your computer has a dialog box there.
Oh. No, we don't want that. There we go. Okay. That was it? All set.
That's it.
Thanks, Rick.
Anyone else? Okay, we will interrupt the regular meeting and go into a quick Board of Liquor Control meeting for an application for a first-class restaurant bar license on 111 Atkinson, Rockingham Street. Hope I get this right. It's KG Dos Banderas is the name of the company applying, so I'll take a motion to approve or disapprove.
I move that we approve the liquor license here, KG Dos Banderas.
Is there a second?
I second.
Motion made second to approve the application for liquor control for a first-class restaurant and bar license at 111 Atkinson Street under the name of KG Dos Banderas. All those in favor would say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, nay. Motion carries. Come around for signature. All right, now back to regular board meeting and application for use of alcohol on municipal property. That is in your packet. It is for Bellows Falls Follies. Information is there. Insurance certificates, et cetera, et cetera. So we need to make a motion to either approve or disapprove this. So I'll take a motion.
I move to approve the use of alcohol on municipal property for the Bellows Follies.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Motion made and seconded to approve the application for a use of alcohol on municipal property for the Bellows Falls Follies. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor would say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, nay. Motion carries. Okay, let's come around. Now, request to fill vacancy for cemetery commission. In your packet, you have a letter of resignation from Kyle Dawson and a request from Ann Manor McClarty to take his place. So, that being said, can we get a motion to appoint Ann Manor McClarty to the Cemetery Committee?
I move that we appoint Ann Manor McClarty to the Cemetery Committee.
Second.
Second that.
Okay, motion's been made and seconded to appoint Ann McClarty, Ann Manor McClarty, excuse me, there's two main names here, to the Cemetery Committee, not commission, but committee. All those in favor, would say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, nay. Motion carried. Okay, moving right along. Presentation draft operating budget, library. Looks like Ian's up.
Where do you want me to be, right here?
Sure, sir, right down here in
This
the
one,
hot
oh my
seat.
God,
Yeah,
really?
we'll turn the
This is
switch
a
on.
star chamber here.
We'll turn the switch on when you get in.
Yeah, should have brought more cookies.
Well, there's.
Would you raise your right hand, please?
I know, this thing's wired in this thing.
Plug into the wall.
We don't have the stuff in front of us, so you'll have to.
Yeah, so, and the reason is that the library board of trustees hasn't finalized
Oh,
the
that's
budget.
okay.
So it's December 5th, that'll happen. So what I'm gonna give you,
Yeah,
I'm gonna
just
give you a
give
quick
us a
script
copy sometime along.
as soon as they're
Finalize
set
the
with it, yeah.
budget.
So,
Sooner the better, of course, but.
all right, so as I was saying, the library board of trustees is midstream in the process. We already met in November, and they agreed to the principles that we were laying out that I'll lay out before you briefly tonight. And we have a meeting scheduled for December 5th to approve the final budget. Obviously, some things still are in flux during the month of November. I just got some numbers relatively recently, and so we try not to lock it in too soon because we've had a problem with that before. But before I get into all those, I just want to give you a quick building update. You know, after I fixed the locks in the building, I was overconfident, so I thought, you know, I'll give the lights a shot. And so, you know, they were very odd. I talked to Elijah about it. They would go out for like a day or a week or a month or months and then come back on again. It seemed very weird. So we figured the ballasts were failing. You were suspicious about that diagnosis. And so anyway, I decided I was just going to go for one. So I went up and I pulled the bulb out, and there was a sticker up there that said 32 watt max. And I was kind of surprised by that because the bulb I pulled out was a 42 watt bulb. So I bought about 60 32 watt bulbs, and now all the lights in the building work again. So, you know, I know, right? It was about $150 worth of bulbs, so we were looking at replacing fixtures at a cost of upward of $150 a fixture.
Yeah, I
So,
was gonna say cheaper than.
a lot cheaper to change the bulb. There's some joke in that about how many librarians
I was
it
gonna say,
takes
how
to
many
change the
guys
light
take
bulb.
your-
Absolutely, yeah.
One guy to hold the bulb before turning the light on the other day.
2 years to wonder why they don't work, right? Exactly. That's a very existential problem. So we're gonna keep trying to chip away at that, but obviously we have other things like painting outside the building, fixing some mortar and some other things that are, you know, disintegrating. There's also a water problem, both an intrusion and when the addition was put on in the late 60s, early 70s, like basically they didn't account for where the water would go, and that's been causing some problems. So we probably need to do some water you know, gutters and stuff to just move it away from where it's coming down right now and causing some problems. Anyway, you know, that's the long-term kind of thing that we're thinking about, and the things that frankly I can't get up. Nobody wants me to get up on a ladder and do that kind of stuff for sure. So, but for the FY25 budget, I'll start by giving you the bottom line and the top line. As we discussed with the library board of trustees, the bottom line is that there's a minimal $1,531 increase for FY25 over FY24 budget. So it's virtually the same for a more than $400,000 budget. But the top line, literally, the tax appropriation to accomplish this, we're requesting, or we're including right now, an $8,000 increase in the tax appropriation. Takes it from $379,250 to $387,250. I'm going to go through a little bit why that's the case. But for context, there has not been a tax appropriation increase for the library budget in 5 years. And FY19 was the last time there was a tax appropriation increase. So we've gone 5 consecutive fiscal years without one. $8,000 represents a 2.1% increase for the tax appropriation for the library. So that's what we're working with right now, but as I said, we're not, December 5th is the day we'll lock this all into place. The reason for this increase is that we've adjusted the library generated revenue downwards by about $9,000. I'll give 2 examples why we've done this. There's pretty much 5 or 6 reasons like that. We've revised our income from investments down by a little more than $1,000, so that's 1/9 of it right now. Also, we've revised income from the library's annual book sale down by $1,500. We've had it at 3,500 for the last 5 years. We've never made more than about 2,000. It's kind of ridiculous that we've been suggesting that we've made 3,500. So what we're doing is trying to be more realistic about what the actual revenue is. It's not really fair to the town to have enough data to predict the figures more accurately and not be doing that. So that's about the revenue side. So that's the shift that we're looking at. And given the increased cost of, everything, you may also be wondering how we limited spending to such a small increase, that $1,531. And because we've been searching for savings, for 2 years, so where could we find any? And here's where we found some to keep the spending flat as well as the revenue. We realized that I've been doing a lot of analysis of all the available data, recent salary survey that came out, the annual report that all the public libraries of Vermont supply data to, and I've realized that our weekly employee hours are slightly elevated relative to our peers. And so the FY25 budget for part-time salary line, for the wages, has 11 hours per week reduction over the past. So we're reducing the part-time, and consequently, that's reducing the costs to the town for that part-time work. We had to make some adjustments, both the merit adjustment and then when there was an open position. So the full-time has actually gone up some, and that's eaten into some of that, but we still have realizing savings from that part-time reduction. And despite that reduction, we still will have the library open the same number of hours that it's open right now. So while we're doing a slight reduction in the number of employee hours, we're not doing a reduction in the open hours of the library. In fact, our plan is, once we kind of let all this settle through, is to go from being open 10 to 1 on Saturday to 10 to 2 on Saturday. So we're actually going to be open longer, despite the fact that we're reducing these other hours some. So there's not an impact on that. And then I just wanted to update you guys that we did sign a 3-year agreement with the union for the library employees. All of the part-time and full-time employees that are at least 19 hours a week, except for me, are in the union. And we did a 3-year contract with 3% for the current year, FY23, and then 2% for FY25 and 2% for FY26. And we believe, the board and I believed, that the library wages, other than this change we had to make for meritorious thing, were correct. And we had to hold the line pretty hard because we believe that to be true in the face of the negotiations. After the negotiations, this very recent salary survey of public libraries in Vermont was released. It's a 102-page report. And to me, and I told the staff that, this information, I told the library board this information, it completely bears out that the salaries are appropriate for the library. And so we were right in negotiating the way we negotiated through the union agreement. But it also means that we're at kind of a pivot point with the library where we're trying to make more resources available to all the lines other than just the compensation line, which is quite large for the library. But we want to invest more in the programming. We want to be able to address the building needs and all this kind of stuff. And so that's basically where we're at. Right now we have, for the first time in 5 years, a tax appropriation increase of minimal amount, but we are making adjustments under the hood, both to offset some of that, but also because they're appropriate based on all the information that we've been able to gather. So that's the big picture of the whole thing. And within the rest of it, it's pretty much normal, what we've been doing all along.
So what's your loss leaders called, so-called, for your revenue? Where did you lost the revenue?
So between that, so a lot of it's illusory, right? I mean, it's like the fact that we were projecting that we were going to get 3,500 from the book sale, but we never did. So that's some of it. I'll give you, because I have some information. I'll tell you where we're expecting these other things to happen. Oh, so we had a total of 15,000 for the miscellaneous fundraising, book sale, and direct appeal. We never came anywhere near that. So 5,000 of it. So 1,500.
That's okay. There must have been a big one in there somewhere.
Yeah, that's the big one. That's the one. And so it's we simply weren't doing the fundraising or getting the fundraising results. And again, I looked back 7 years, so we looked deep into it to see. I needed to know pre-pandemic and everything. Had we been somewhere that we had fallen from that we should be trying to get back to? And the fact is no. We just had always sort of had more aspirational goals for the revenue, then we're realistic.
So how about, out of state, or out of town, memberships?
So,
Have you guys looked at that? 'Cause I know there's an article in the paper or someplace I saw that one of the other towns has increased theirs.
Springfield.
well, that's a good idea. I mean, I can,
Springfield.
Springfield, that's what I thought, yeah.
we do charge that, but, you know, I should, you know, peg it and make sure that we're charging the right amount.
Yeah,
Because
I know.
people happily pay it to get, it's a great library, so
Well,
they're happy to get it. so,
That's it. But,
Yeah.
You know, it's another way to get revenue, I mean, you know.
Yeah,
I think they went up to 60 from 50, and then next year they're going up to
Yeah,
70.
they're going,
or
yeah,
something
yeah,
like
they're
that.
going about.
we're at
30.
70.
We're at 70, okay.
But maybe that's not right. I mean, you know, we know that the tax appropriation, you know, is high for this town and stuff. And so we want to make sure that what we're charging non-residents is equivalent to what we're, you know, in some way into what the residents are paying to support the library. So,
It's also really good library.
it's a really good, yeah, I mean, we get people from Walpole, people from Putney, people from, you know, so we're happy to take that money. And it would be great if there were more.
No, I'm just curious.
Yeah, so we do it, but it's a really good place to look at this thing.
Do you know how many ag card holders you have?
You know, I could look, I mean, in FY '23, we made $1,305 from non-residents. So, I mean, divided by 70, it's about 200, am I doing that math?
About 20, 30.
20, yeah.
That sounds like it.
It's not a huge number. No, it's definitely, and I would guess it's in that vicinity of 20 or so. So, and we could advertise, you know.
I think maybe we should.
Yeah, it's an
I
interesting
think we
idea.
should, like in the point, did you know that our library is so big and
Yeah.
all this stuff, and it's only $75.
Well, the other thing is that people, I got 80, you know,
$80.
yeah, right, it's a bargain at any rate. You
I
know,
think you should, I really think you should.
well, the thing, and one of the ways to do it is we get a lot of out-of-town people to come to a lot of the programming that we do, and so we can have information
always
there,
mention
because
it.
they're in the building. Yeah, always mention it, yeah.
Yeah, you
That's an
really,
excellent idea.
you really should, because I think a lot of people would give it a that.
Yeah, because even if, you know, if we got another 500 or 1,000, I mean, you know, it makes a big difference.
Yeah.
Friends of the library, what do they contribute?
Well, I mean, I would guess $5,000 a year is probably a pretty good average. It's significant, you know, and the nice thing is all the money that they raise comes to the library in one form or another, because they don't support anything else. They're the friends of the library.
Right.
And so you know, I go down to the Welcome Center when they do that, which is a big fundraiser. They make $1,600, $1,800, $1,900 when they do a big sale down there
Down
in
in
July down at Guilford, yeah.
Yeah.
And I go down and spend time with them, and that's all that kind of stuff. We're having I should have mentioned at the beginning, the friends are having a holiday party on December 2nd at the library that everyone should come to. And the music and food, not just these awful cookies and everything.
Good cookies.
Those are good cookies. Do you want to know where they're from? IKEA.
Oh, really?
Seriously.
IKEA.
IKEA. Mhm.
Did you have to put them together?
I did. But the instruction manual was really clear, you know?
They got these little pins in them, I see.
It's all plastic tubes. holding
Yeah.
it together. So, I mean, honestly, any ideas people have for us to generate more revenue, we're all over it. That's great, you know, to go from like thinking some of these lines, I want to be careful what language I use, but mildly inflated accidentally, let's say, you know, to, and, you know, being realistic about it, but if we can fill some of those back up or find different lines, that's fantastic. That'd be great. And we don't charge, another one of the things is we don't charge late fees anymore, and it's, almost no one does. It was determined that the people who need the library the most are the ones that stop coming because they owe like 70 cents in late fees. And so even the New York Public Library that was getting up millions of dollars in late fees stopped charging late fees. And for 2 years, the Friends of the Library filled that budget line. So we had, I think it was $1,400, $1,800, something. And I asked them when I first started if they would carry that until we could take it out of the budget. And they did that, which was great, but you know,
Also,
we can't ask them to do it
people
forever.
sometimes just don't bring the book back if they've got a big fine.
Both, yeah. I mean, you hear the great stories about the person who brought the book back from
20 years
1942, right? Yeah, but you know, we don't make it on CNN for some reason, so something's wrong there. But, oh, and one more thing I should mention, because, you know, it's dollars, but we are in the midst of a $6,000 digital literacy grant that AT&T gave us, and we've been advertising it all over the place. we used the money to buy 11 really nice laptop computers that the library then gets to keep. And Pamela Johnson-Spurlock, our new reference and historical collections library, is leading classes free for the community and all sorts of different things, like, you know, how to navigate the internet, you know, how not to get catfished, you know, how to use Word, how to use email, all that kind of stuff. And, you know, people are trickling in and stuff, but she's going to turn that, after the grant's over in December, then we'll start doing things like how to use the library catalog, how to use Biblio Plus, which is our streaming video service, how to use Levy, which is the streaming audio and stuff like that. And so, you know, I think these are really good ways for us to connect in the community, and that was all paid for with grant money, just like the Biblio thing, which is great. So.
Good job. Your programming has been great.
Yeah, it really
The
has.
ideas you guys come up with for programs.
It's only going to get better.
It's really great.
Yeah, Pamela is a force of nature, so
Yeah,
yeah, she's really going to be doing between her and Ann, I think. So.
great pair.
Okay, any questions?
Yeah, and the only other thing, I know there was some federal legislation to support just libraries, kind
Yep.
of like where we got ARPA funds. And
Yep.
was there anything that the library was able to apply for? See that?
So the application for that all got delayed because of the floods, but they're expecting this month.
Okay.
Well, I'm thinking maybe not this month now, but they were hoping this month to make those open, but I've already actually submitted, you know, we had somebody come in and do an assessment to put some private rooms in, which is what one of the things was focused on. They were looking at funding telehealth, remote education, and just sort of private meeting spaces and stuff. And we don't really have those things in the library right now. We have big spaces, people are happy to use them, but we like to have big things happen in them. And so we got an estimate, and they ran a process in March or April where I put all that information in, and then it really got delayed because of the floods. And they, you know, a lot of libraries were really badly damaged in the floods, and so the Department of Libraries was really focused and has been on that. But I've met with them a couple times lately. Actually, the Department of Libraries ran a meeting out of our library about a month ago about the fiber program, which was really cool. All the libraries from southern Vermont, you know, came here for the Department of Libraries to run this meeting. And they were talking about that, and they said soon. They
So
said
it's
next
still
month,
out
and
there.
that was October, and now we're in November,
Yeah,
but
a
soon.
lot of things were delayed with grants, but that's great, it's still out there.
Yeah, it's still out there, and
That's great.
I am very confident we're actually gonna get that, because it's a bullseye for us, what we're trying to do.
Do you have a space where those new rooms would go?
Yeah, I mean, you know the library, so the space where there's tables beside the fiction section that is on the south wall in the main bay is pretty not used very efficiently. And so the thought is to have 3 rooms. This is what we spec'd out. In the southeast part of that room, to have a larger room that would be up to like 5 or 6 people. And then beyond, the 2 beyond that, one in the center part of that wall and one in the far part, that would be more like for 2 people or whatever. Because part of this is so a single person in a private space can connect to a doctor. You know, sometimes people just live in rural areas and don't have internet capability. So here they have both a private space and internet capability. And obviously the privacy that's necessary for having things like medical visits is really, really important. And so that's why that funding is available.
Or they don't have a computer that will allow it, it has to be an updated computer.
Exactly. So, I mean, the infrastructure for the internet we provide, which is probably the most robust in the area, is paid for by the state 10 years ago through the Fiber Connect program. And so, and there's that equipment will be upgraded at no cost to the town sometime in the near future. But I can't talk much about that yet. That's still developing. So, yeah.
A question just off the track of the budget here. Your book return box out front, it's slowly degrading into rust. Because I saw one of your helps out there taking books out and asked her, she said, you have a new box down there, but you haven't been able to get anybody to put the new one in place.
So, it shouldn't be a puzzle, but it's a puzzle, and here's why. That box is anchored into bolts that were sunk into the concrete pad that it sits on. And the new box that was ordered has a different layout for the anchor bolts. And so I'm not that smart, and so it stymied me for a fair amount of time until because I was like, now we gotta dig up the pad or cut the bolts, and then I was like, you know what we have to do? This just occurred to me as I was changing all the light bulbs. We just have to drill new holes in the base of this thing, because that's the obvious, yeah, thank you. I'm very slow at this, but that was obviously, yeah, that's all it is.
Box together and just
Yep.
go that way. and
But
then-
part of this is that that box was ordered with, so during the renovation, there was apparently like a landscape layout that was configured and desired that just never made the final cut of anything. And so there's a lot of, well, you can't just put the new box where the old box was, because then you don't change everything else. And I've said over and over, we're not changing everything else, we're just putting the box in. But the bolts don't line up. So I'm gonna get, am I gonna drill it myself? Probably not. I won't tell you if I do. And I'll do it off a library property and out of library hours. But somebody's gonna drill holes in that thing
Yeah,
and
we
see
can
if
drill
that's what
holes
we
in
can.
in the box, and the
That's
box
all,
and
yeah,
match
yeah.
the other ones, then you can just slide right on the bolts.
Slide it right on the bolts,
The trick will
yeah.
be to get the bolts off, the nuts off of the bolts that are in there, they may be rusted.
I've already
to the
done
point
that.
Where,
That part isn't a problem.
That sounds like something our wonderful Rotary would do for you.
hey, true.
Yeah,
So you-
somebody just, couldn't even tell you the group just replaced, I don't think it was the Rotary, replaced the bench up front.
That was Rotary.
That was a road.
Yeah, fantastic, yeah, so now we got a new bench, it's great, yeah.
Yeah, so.
Um,
Okay, any other
Well,
questions for Ian? All right, thank you very much, appreciate your hard work, and we'll look forward to a copy of that when you get one finalized.
December 6th, December 5th it'll be finalized.
It sounds like a good one.
I'll walk it down on December
All righty.
6th then.
Appreciate it.
Thank you all.
All right, number 4 is Deb's big spotlight here, presentation of recommendations for Social Services Levy Review Committee. That's a mouthful and a half. We have your information of your recommendation sheet and a couple explanations. We don't need to get into specifics today, but if you could just kind of give the board a little bit of
Sure. Well, I
rationale
expected
for
it.
how you guys approach this and.
I thought the other two guys would be here, but, that they figured I could run with it, right? So we did all the meetings, we, stuck an opportunity for one agency. You can see by the spreadsheet, we've gone through these, and all of this is the final information. You can see the 3, well, there are 5 altogether that had, larger requests. About 3 of them have had increases. You see how much that is. We didn't put an answer by that, but the truth is we're fine with funding them with their increases, except for the 2 that you have. The 2 additional explanations were significant requests, asks, and we thought we hope that you see our recommendations show that there's some reasoning to reduce the amount that they requested. That's pretty much it. The explanations were, we got kind of into it in order to make sure that you could see why we did that. But of course, it's up to you and any agency that would like to change the answer that you come up with has another bite of the apple in March.
Okay, we don't want to say what our plan is to post this on the website so people can have it, because it is a public document once it reaches this board. And we'll put the spreadsheet that I made up from the other towns, so they'll have that information to look at. You know, the funding that the other towns provide to these same organizations, so you can have a comparison across to see where we sit compared to everybody else.
We did all the meetings. The last meeting was our session where we talked about what we thought would be appropriate. And it didn't really take us all that long. We were had finalized it in our minds before we got to the meeting, and so it made it that much simpler to go forward to you. And I know we've talked about it's increasing every year, and what you decide to do with it.
So, I'm trying to understand the chart.
Yeah, stuff of it. What do you need?
All right, it says Fact TV.
Oh, what's
And
listed, but then take
nothing.
it on. You guys, you
Fact
folks
TV
will
is
decide
under
that.
professional services.
So
I
that's
think.
somewhere else,
Yeah.
okay. all
Yeah,
right.
it was
And another
listed
one
to
that's
us,
gonna be
but
taken off of there is gonna be a pipe project. Will come off of that and go under community funding.
Oh, okay, all right. So what you're agreeing to or disagreeing is the increase, right?
right, but not what Fact TV is
Right,
not
they have
happening,
this
right?
thing
We have
there.
no information.
Only
from
the
Fact
two
TV.
Right.
you see that says see attached. The others, we did agree, I forgot to write, go ahead and fund it with the others, but I wanted to show you on the chart that they increased from previous year in their ask. But we did not have any significant reasons to say no.
Okay,
We thought
so,
they were pretty much justified, and one of the agencies, we didn't say anything about it. Looks to me like they ought to ask for more money, but so small, but,
so the mover they wanted more money, but you're only going to give them 375.
No, that's the increase line. We didn't necessarily disagree, we looked at all their paper and their documentation, but they have gone up $375 from the previous year. Their ask is higher. It's up to you what you decide to do about that.
We'll go through that when we get to the, that's part of the budget.
Those are just
Alright,
the,
so-
you'll see
But
increase.
this will give you an idea of what they were asked for, what they received, and
I see.
what their recommendation to do with the funding.
Then you've got something to say about visiting nurses, right?
Yep. And
I saw a document that what other towns were doing for the same organizations. When you compare them, is it by cost per resident of the town? Is that how we compare them? Like,
all of them had different formulas on how they calculated that. And some of the formulas didn't make sense when they said they had been level funding for several years. When we know easily that fluctuations in population have gone up and down. So the formula, but they all had different reasons for the formula. One of them is based upon the amount of uncompensated funds that they don't get back. So they figure it out from there, and that's how they determine what they ask us for. Others used population. Some of them simply used the number of people they served based on some cost factor. It wasn't exactly as formulaic as I would have hoped for in all cases, but you know, they're all, each individual organization. The other thing that we had wanted to express, which we didn't in the paperwork, is that there is a lot of redundancy in organizations. Everybody has their heartstrings pulled by certain social service organizations, right? But many of them are doing the same things.
right.
And you know, the thing with going through this Bible that you guys went
I know,
through.
that's Megan's copy. Mine at home is huge.
Yeah, well, I think it's pretty much the same, isn't there? You may have personal notes on,
I have notes all over mine, yeah.
all right, eventually I might get to yours.
Should be
but-
the same paperwork, yeah.
But going through that, there's a lot of them, like you just said, that there's a head agency and there's about 5 of them that come off of that agency, and they're also asking
Yeah.
funding
As a
along
matter-
with that
As a
same.
matter of fact, one of
So
these
it's
agencies
crazy.
here,
Yeah, it doesn't-
Senior Solutions, is really a pass-through of funds.
Right.
From like the Agency of Aging and the Meals on Wheels program.
Right.
They get the money, they distribute the money to the other organizations. So that's their job. And that's how. they-
Everybody's welcome to look at this when I get done reading it if they want.
And-
I wouldn't mind.
Yeah,
The
it's
RSVP
interesting
agency,
reading.
I just wanted to point that one out. RSVP, which is
Yeah.
on this list. I used to think they were the welcome wagon. But, I mean, that's all I knew about them. In the course of the meeting, I realized that it's the Retired Senior Volunteer Program. And they do an awful lot of work for, as you can see on the list, a small amount of money they're requesting.
Yeah, that's what I say, reviewing this, you can see which ones we're getting the bang for the buck for versus those that are just,
I
you
know,
know,
yes.
that are really overloading
That
the
continue
cards,
asking, yeah.
and we don't get a lot of return
Without
back.
balance from some communities, because we did look at other communities' numbers. One of the things we asked every one of the agencies is, what other towns do you serve, and what do you ask of them? And some of them didn't ask other towns, although they served other towns.
Right,
For giving, and some of them asked way less than we took the lion's share in many cases with organizations.
so,
And what is the Greater Falls Justice Center?
They provide things like help with youth in our community who get in trouble. They, court diversion, they help them out with legal issues that they may need. If you get a DUI, and they help them do all the things they need. There's many of that, along with some adult work as well. There's a bunch of that. There is an amazing amount of work that programs that they actually have, and it should be in the paperwork
yeah.
that Peter has.
Go through that. It's-
But there's a lot of assistance that they
Went
can
through a third of it
recommend.
right now, so.
Right, I don't know what some of these groups do, so this will be helpful.
They're all in there, so they do give you a description, but like I say, it's interesting reading,
Thanks.
so. Okay, anything else for Deb? As I say, we'll get into this a little later, and if once we confirm numbers and the budget, we'll put it on the website so that public document. It'll also be in the town report anyway, but if anybody wants to peek at it beforehand, we'll get them on the website. And I personally would like to thank you guys for doing the work you did, because
It was very enlightening.
I
have
know
to say.
your first fear was it may be all for naught, because, you know.
And, that's always a possibility.
But we have to, every year we should have to do it. We gotta look into changing our process, Tom, too, is the paperwork I sent, the board has the same stuff, plus the explanation or the definition of social service agencies from the state statute right there, so.
And as you've already seen, some communities simply throw a number at, they just make a decision in the list, is this how much they're gonna donate, everybody gets $1,000, something like that. Rockingham, for many decades, has been very generous.
Yeah.
And it's not necessarily without good reason. There's a
Right.
lot of services being used by a lot of people.
Yeah.
No doubt.
So. Okay,
Thank you.
anything else?
Just a process question. The select board will have an agenda item on a future meeting to
Yeah.
review this and make decisions.
Right.
And if we, in the question of overlap, how would will we just have to hash that out?
Yeah, basically.
Okay.
We'll have to make a decision right by the time we finalize our warning, because this will all have to go on.
Right, so it's gonna happen in the next
So by
couple
January,
meetings.
right, we'll have to have it pretty much, at least that portion will have to be decided.
I
Does
mean,
the
we can
warning
look at
have to
that
be
list and
finished?
say, you know, okay, we agree, this,
Right.
these funding, and then they can dump it into the budget and work from there, then it's also, we have a question on, we'll just have to refine it. And
Well, we're hoping to review the warning on the
Pretty sure that
19th.
probably 80% or so of these are gonna be the same as status quo, but, it's just the other ones, but don't forget, the caveat is that even if they get neglected or reduced, they can always come back to town meeting and stand up with a petition and ask for, you know, their regular funding or additional, which is why we need to look at our process too, which I sent you, the Westminster process, and
Did you make a note of redundancies that you came up with?
We did not, but we didn't list it as a report, because it's not our area to do, but we found a lot of that in the review. So, if you look through the paperwork, any of those agencies, they handle a lot of the same numbers of things. And there's like some portion of town or some portion of towns that they're all getting, because who knows who to go to first, or second, or third, and it's what they hear. So people will use the agencies they find, but it would be nice if at some point they would converge and put themselves together, you know, regroup, and they would actually probably get better bang for the buck if they did that and provide better service.
Yeah, and just in terms of competing for grants and everything else.
Everybody's putting their hand in the same pot.
Yeah, I know, it's
Yeah.
like dogs fighting over bones, you know?
right.
That's it. But to everyone, it's a sacred thing. This is one they've been doing for many people, contributing to by donations for years. They want to see those services. But maybe if some of them got together, but how to make that happen, that's up to the organization, really.
Well, I guess you start squeezing them.
Well, that's one of the reasons why we do the review every 5 years,
You know?
To go through that.
And just to suggest, you know,
I mean, that, as I say, the
You're
process.
hearing us here on Fact TV that, you know, perhaps some of the organizations would be better served by getting together
yes,
and combining their services.
Yeah.
and the community too.
So. Okay, Deb, appreciate it. Just pass on my thanks to the
I will.
gentleman
I'll let them know
that
yes.
served on the
A
committee.
lot of work there.
Thank you.
Yeah,
So.
we're glad to be done with it. We're glad, we knew it was important when we get started.
A lot of work, but kind of, as you say, it's enlightening when you start digging into it.
It is.
See what's going on.
Thank you. You have a good holiday.
You too, guys, thanks, yeah. All right, let's go into the presentation of major capital projects and debt schedule. There's before we go too far, Scott has provided us with a proposed budget schedule, so you know what the dates may be coming up and who's gonna be on the hot seat.
Just trying to give you guys the highlights.
And then we get into the next sheet, which is, as I just said, the major capital improvements.
So we should probably start with that long-term debt schedule, because it sort of tells a little bit of a story that I think is important, that sort of then dovetails into the discussion on some of the major capital. And by no means was it my major capital memo everything, it was just some of the larger expense items that, you know, are potentially items that the board might have to bond, or we have substantial grants or other sources that we'll need to tap into in order to make those projects complete. But this schedule is important for a couple of reasons. You can see here, we're in an interesting sort of 3-year window here. We've got a couple of larger notes that are going to be paying out in the next 2 budget years, which is good news, and they drop off in the fiscal '26 year. So you see a substantial reduction in our principal and interest payments. But what it does do is a couple of these have sort of balloon payouts at the end. So you'll notice on a couple of these vehicles, especially the, I think it's what the pumper truck and the 2019 just regular truck. You'll see that both of those have fairly substantial principal payments in '25. So the point of it being is when we had looked at our overall debt ratios and we had talked about our commitment to paving and commitment to some of our major projects, we balanced some of that with our ARPA funding, and also then the board took a position that they wanted to balance some of the ARPA spending with additional grant spending, so we were able to leverage those dollars as well. It gave us a window here to start to pay down some of our longer-term obligations so that we can free up some debt, that if we have to go forward and borrow, the board can feel comfortable they can do that and not have these major impacts on the tax rate. A couple of issues that, again, the borrowing environment right now isn't wonderful. Everybody's aware of interest rates, so that impacts our decisions, obviously, as we go forward. We're hopeful to see that maybe regress and come back a little bit before we have to go out into the marketplace and test out what our municipal bonds might be in this new market. And there are some options for us to look at shorter term notes that might not necessarily have to be, the longer term obligations like we've had paying out on the town hall or paying out on the library. We're gonna have some obligations as we go forward with our portion of the costs of the depot bridge. And again, we were in a good position there because of some of the federal funding where they took away our share of the construction costs, but we still have other costs that are associated. We're still working on trying to get those finalized, and I still don't have all that information. So there's still a couple pieces there of that have to be finalized. I'm hoping to have VHB and the engineers coming back sometime in January, so we can talk about some of the open items, the lighting on the bridge, the final design on the rails, the issues about the contaminated soils. I still don't have an estimate on what our contaminated soils portion might be. And then if there's any other opportunities to offset some of the costs that we've talked about, the potential loss of the hydro with coordination of construction with them. That's still an open item, still in discussion. And it's a huge unknown for us, obviously, when we start talking about some of the costs that they're not able, the utility offset costs that they're not able to supply and the demand portions when they're required to feed the grid. There's other offsets to that are also potentially available to us. We might be able to get waivers, so where we would not be responsible for that. So there's a lot of discussion we still have to have. The fact that they had to delay that project another year, I think, helped us in terms of this schedule, because now that gives us another at least year to 18 months, where if we continue with our current process of paying down our debt, keeping ourselves, at least if we're borrowing within the parameters of what we see falling off. If you look at the fiscal year '26 schedule, where you can see we have almost a 300, in the neighborhood of $250,000 to $300,000 worth of capacity to pay additional principal and interest in that fiscal year going forward. So you have some capacity that's building up. So you have some options there. But I think the key here that we wanted to just make the board aware was that you do have a couple of these payments that will be ballooning in '25. So '24 isn't necessarily an issue. It's pretty consistent. Slight pay down from, I think, what we paid last year. But then you'll see there's a little bit of a pressure point in '25, and then significant relief as we go forward into '26. And our fire feasibility study, and part of the reason why I think part of the recommendations and the board's conversation about that are so important, is you can see what these decisions do in terms of how it impacts all of your financial decision-making, because these trucks and these long-term notes are expensive, and the costs of some of the vehicles that we're looking at have doubled in price since the last time we put together the equipment replacement schedules. So there's significant pressures, and the board will have to take some serious looks at how do we accommodate some of these requests and maintain the public safety services, which are critical. We're not trying to decrease the amount of services we're offering people, but certainly you want to try to look at what's affordable, what's reasonable, and in today's environment, education, educating the public as to here's the big picture, here's all these factors, here's what's impacting us, and now we have decisions to be made, because we're all taxpayers at some level. We all have to decide how do we want to allocate these resources. So that feasibility study feeds into this bigger picture as we go forward.
Scott, will the Triton study be discussed at the Triton board meeting, the results, or will be in?
No, we're not. We'll have some updates, and we'll have some additional times of when some of the more materials are coming. But we've gone past some of the hurdles that got us delayed on the implementation phase.
So the recommendations of that survey could affect the acquisition of equipment, right?
Well, we did not make any proposals for any equipment acquisition for the next budget year. And at a minimum, I wouldn't think anything would happen until the board had a chance to go through the recommendations from the study, and then have an opportunity to sit down and look at that and what that might mean. On top of the other obligations that we're going to start talking about with the other major capital. So a lot of these numbers are large. Hopefully they don't scare people. There's a lot of good news in these numbers too. So I don't, it's not all gloom and doom. The industrial park drainage, that's an ongoing story. As you guys are aware, we've had a couple of washouts from some of these storms. The long-term fix to repair the drainage issues, and also then to eliminate the washouts that occur at the railroad and then down as it empties into the river, we're looking at about a $2 million, almost a $2 million project. The good news on that is we have already gotten some state funds already secured. So that's a bit of good news. We are waiting to hear from Federal Highways on a second piece of grant that would help offset the total project cost. We got some emails back and forth today. We've been submitted for a while. One of the frustrations in some of these grants is they don't keep to, as Ian even said, they don't keep to these strict deadlines, right? So you apply for these grants, and then you wait and you wait, and you email and you wait, and you ask, do you think you might have it done by December? Well, we can't tell you if it's going to be December. It might be January. It could be March. So there's just no timelines on some of these decisions.
Scott, since Route 5, a lot of the water that comes down through there passes under, through, around Route 5, is that why we would qualify for federal highway money?
There are specific grants that relate to stormwater drainage off of these state routes, and that's part of the reason why we're asking for this. So, but it has a material impact on our industrial park.
Right.
So it also, there's some economic development pieces to this and maintenance of jobs. This one particularly, we've been in touch with our senators and tried to keep them abreast of where this is and ask them to speak to some of the folks in Federal Highway about how important it is to the Southern Vermont area. These are some of our higher paid jobs and probably our industrial base, so to speak. So these are folks that we really want to try to keep here and maintain.
So this is Chroma and...
So basically everybody up in the industrial park, Sonex, Chroma, Whitney Blake, a couple of smaller people that are in some of the smaller buildings. But it's over 400 or 500 jobs up in that area. So it's significant for us. The Opera House roof, it's the ongoing story. If you come visit the third floor, you can see how bad we need the roof replaced. We've had to patch through the summer because it was so wet. So all we've done is basically chased the problem, from one area. So we stopped the majority of leaking that was occurring in the Opera House and in the production spaces, but it's now migrated and it's farther on the other end of the building,
Where your offices are?
closer to where that third floor meeting room is, so that's why you see all that additional damage up there. The membrane is just failing. So the folks that are the granting people from Wyndham Regional are coming on the 11th of December to do our on-site. We're one of the first, I think, on-site visits. So I'm hopeful that that puts us first in line if we get approved to get the first round of funds. And that 500,000, we've had updated estimates, would pay for all of the drainage improvements and the membrane improvements that we need. So that's a significant project for us, and we're hopeful that that can go forward and be done. The windows and the brick repair on this building, that sort of finishes the outside envelope. We had started the window project. Our contractor got ill, didn't recover, so he only got about half the job done. So we have to go back and finish the rest of the windows. And then obviously we have brick repair on this building that needs to happen as well to make us watertight. And then we'll include some plaster repair in that as well. We are asking for a Paul Brune grant, which is a historic preservation grant, which would help offset some of that cost. But that will probably also require some additional bonding in order to finish that project in time for the 100th anniversary. So we put that number in there as well.
Do we have any of the money that originally got set aside for that window? I thought I saw in the budget, we haven't spent it all. I thought it was like 30 or 40,000 that was sitting out there for window repair that we hadn't.
There was some money. I think we used that on the
I think it got eaten up
on the
with.
reinforcement on the steel beam.
Okay.
Yes.
Well, I guess it's on the
I
line
think at
item
this
there, so
point,
I just shared, okay,
It'd be
all right.
substantially more anyways to get that work done.
Right.
I don't think 3,000 seems.
I mean, every bit helps, but I think we had reused that as part of that roof the reinforcement project and the lighting project. 121 is an interesting timing process because we're still trying to work with our neighbors in Westminster about both of us doing resurfacing at the same time. Obviously, we would pay the contractors, but each community would pay for their portion of the work. But there are two undersized culverts there that would need to be upsized and should be done prior to doing the actual repaving, so we don't have to come back and tear up the road at some point in the future. So that grant application is coming due shortly, and you'll probably see that here coming up on one of these future meetings as well.
Those culverts are on obviously within Rockingham.
Yes.
Yeah.
Is there one in Westminster as
See
well?
those two dips that are in there where Ski Bowl Road is there, there's one big dip, and then
Yeah.
close to get to West Sac River, there's two of them there. That, where the trench comes down from the hill, by the yellow house there, the little ranch house, and it goes across the road there. Those two dips there, those.
Oh, they're failing culverts, or just undersized?
Yeah. Well,
They're failing and
They're failing,
undersized.
but if you're gonna do it, you might well
Right.
go to bigger size, because it's gonna take longer.
Right,
Right.
so
Has Andy been in touch with the Westminster highway guy and?
we've had a few conversations. I have not spoken to their new town manager, so at some point I will sort of bring him up to speed on some of this. I don't know.
Yeah.
He's in his first couple weeks, so I didn't want to, we'll get in line. I'm sure he'll have enough to sort through, but that's an important project for us. We're also hoping to reuse, like I said, some of that gravel that we're potentially making out of the materials that we dragged out of the river to help with some of the base reconstruction, because there's some sections of 121, they're gonna need a complete reconstruction. It's not just a mill and pave. So that's gonna be an extensive project. We're also hoping to apply for our paving grant for that year as well. So we're hoping to get an additional offset for that. So that's a major project if we take that one up and if all those pieces come together.
At what point do you think you'll start to get some pricing on where that could potentially, ballpark figure?
The culverts are the first piece, so I'm hoping to get that first. And then once we get that, the reconstruction will follow. So it will be significant. It will probably be most of your paving budget, probably have to borrow as well to get that done. Leach Road, we've had a hazard mitigation grant submitted for a substantial period of time. It's another one of those continual follow-ups, no response, no no time deadline in terms of when that funding might be awarded. So as you can see, it's a substantial amount to replace those 3 culverts there. It's almost $1 million. And 2 have already been replaced previously, and those 2 functioned and actually didn't blow out in the July storms. So I guess the good news is the engineers, when they design these things and they're put in, they work. So the tough part of it is they're expensive. And as you can see, that's a substantial amount of money.
Are these box culverts?
These are box culverts. Church Place, School Street, we're still working on the transportation alternatives implementation grant, but we've been talking with the school. They want to do some work. We want to do some work. There's an opportunity to apply for some money, which we're going to try to do that. We've probably seen applications during the next meeting for this, for the TA grant for that portion. We will see if it's a little premature because we won't have finished all of the work around the pedestrian improvements. But I think enough of this is reasonable enough where I think we might be able to get it approved in talking to the people we've spoken to already at the state level. So we're hopeful that that can work out. The train station, this is the Federal Railroad is the Chrissy grant, and it's an acronym for something that I never remember what the hell it is, but it's about $1.8 million. And that's really the biggest piece of this grant. Once we get to that portion, and we're close, we're almost done with all of our, I had a brief conversation with our attorney this evening. We have a draft lease agreement. We also have a draft purchase and sale agreement. So we're hoping to be able to get one final review from him, and then if it looks good, try to bring that up to you, possibly for your December 5th meeting. Excuse me, for your approval. So that would kick off then the next round of funding that we've talked about. The big piece here is we still have some unfunded work that'll happen. Gary's got tranches of money. We have Northern Borders money. We have Downtown Transportation Fund money. We've asked for some CDBG funds. All have been authorized. The big one, like I said, is $1.8 million is the Chrissy grant. That's the biggest one. We also have some cleanup grants that we've asked for from Wyndham Regional because we have some removal. I think there's some asbestos and a few other things that have to be done there as well in the building. So all those pieces are funded, but we still have a gap in that phase 2 that we might need some additional bonding for. And then the final big piece on buildings, because as you can see, there's a theme running through here with streets and buildings, is the Meeting House. There's a couple of additional tranches of money that they're looking at for their second phase of work. So we've sort of secured everything we think we're good on the first phase, which is the monies from the Save America's Treasure, some of the ARPA funds, and some of the monies already allocated. The second phase will be some private donor work that they're working on, sesquicentennial grant funds, which Walter is applying for, and potentially some Broome grant funds, but he'll need some additional matching funds to get that phase 2 work done. So those dollars are still being developed, but it's a pretty consistent number, that 150, in terms of additional support that they'll need outside of those other sources to finish that second phase of the restoration. And then finally, the 2 big ones that we are still working our way through, the 2 big bridge projects, Depot and Vilas. I gave you guys updated copies of those 2, just so that you have them in terms of the scope of the projects. As you can see, substantial. The Depot Bridge is roughly a almost 14.8 when it's all in. With the scoping, preliminary engineering, and right-of-way, that portion is our responsibility, some portion of that. So that's almost 3.1 million. I think we're responsible for 20% of that, I believe. And then the balance, all of the construction, which normally was 80-20, is now 100% on, because of the one of the infrastructure bills paid for that portion, so that we were not responsible for that additional funding of that 11 million. So 20% of 11 million would have been a substantial amount. So that was a huge benefit for us for that piece. And then finally, you can see this is the updated wireless schedule. It has not changed as far as I know, it's still fully funded. The issues for us again is more, if you look at the funding portions, the portions that are Vermont would be a portion that we would be, a piece of that we would be responsible for. In the early years, 26, it's not a lot. As you go out past that, when you get into the construction pieces in 29, the Vermont portions in 29 and 30 raise up to what, 355 is roughly the cost in 29, and then additional 5 something in 30, and another 311 in 31. So, and we'd be responsible for a portion of that. All things, you know, all in, that project is still over 20 million, still in the tip, still funded. So, you know, sort of one of those good news, bad news scenarios. And then the last bridge, which we really don't have any information on, is the Bridge Street Bridge. And we had applied for a regional designation for that bridge a year and a half, 2 years ago. We were one of the projects that was considered to be put forward. It did not get funded past the regional recommendation. In talking with the regional folks, they think they're going to do another round potentially next year. We'll apply again for Bridge Street. Again, we have no idea of the type of funding or when these decisions will be made, but somewhere in this window between the beginning of the depot project, the beginning of the Vilas project in 26, we're hoping to fit the Bridge Street Bridge somewhere in this window between 2025 and 2030. So how that fits or how it's going to be accomplished is still somewhat unclear, but that's probably the greatest unknown that we have going forward. So.
Questions?
Yes.
We can't close on the train station until the funding stack is set or not?
No, the biggest issue that we had was these terms, because we had 4 entities that we were negotiating with, and they were changing the goalposts multiple times, and we had to give up basically everything. So it was not really a negotiation, it was a beating. So we just accepted our beating over time. And I guess they beat us down to the point where they thought, okay, that's enough. So the lease is now in shape. The other issue was we couldn't finish the purchase and sale until the lease was approved, because we wouldn't have had access to the building, because we don't own the right of way. So that's why it was such a delay. So we're talking with the attorney again, we're trying to do a joint closing. So at the same closing we do the purchase and sale, we would also do the lease agreement at the same time. So there wouldn't be any concern about getting access to the building, since we don't own the right of way or have an easement granted through the right of way technically to the building once we own it.
So in the past, when people walked into the train station, they walked over someone else's land?
It was never defined. Train station had been there for so long, and some of the improvements had been made, they had never been surveyed. So the railroad and the DOT and the town had all just taken it for granted. These were where the lines were. And it turned out it wasn't exactly where everybody thought it was.
So have we resurveyed?
It's been resurveyed. So now we know. But again, we didn't want to buy the entire parcel, if you remember. Part of the conversations were that whole property is contaminated. They don't have to clean it up because it's railroad property and it's exempt. If we had bought the entire parcel, immediately it would have been required to be cleaned up, and the cost would have been astronomical. Yeah.
The state of Vermont owns the land under the train station,
Yes.
but they have leased that land to the railroad?
But Vermont Rail Systems, which is a state agency, has some obligations. We have 2 operating railroads that also have rights within that right of way. So
That's crazy.
there's a lot of competing interests. And it was not a, like I said, and the railroad is not an easy partner to negotiate with. And they have an active rail, in fairness to them, that's a very active rail station for them in terms of transfer of freight and that freight operation. And they're very protective of that right of way. So they were very aggressive as to the types of things that they wanted us to do or not do. That's why we had such a hard time with simple things like the shed roof on the building.
Right.
So, with all that being said, I think we're at the point though, we're feeling pretty good about closing in December.
He needs cookies.
Sorry.
Trying to stay away from here.
Cookie break. Well, she's so upset by the bridge cost. She's
Yeah,
gonna-
that's gonna trigger up here.
Do we have a sense yet from the state how they're, I know this Vermont's going to get a significant amount of money from the federal transportation pile of money. But do we have a sense yet of what they're planning to do with that? I can't remember how much they said, but I remember it was quite significant.
3 billion, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a big number.
3.1 or something like
Something
that.
like that, that's what sticks in my mind. But do we have a sense yet of what
No,
they're planning with that?
and there's so many unfunded projects in the rail that I think they could eat that up just on positive train control, just that alone. For the freight and to try to move stuff at a higher rate of speed. That was a couple billion just to do that. So, I mean, it's insane. The numbers are insane when you get into some of these. So, lots of big projects, lots of big numbers, lots of moving parts. The good news is, and Vermont is unique in this respect, because we're such a small state, we have pretty good relationships with our higher level officials, our federal officials. And so it's easy for us to get in touch with them and say, hey, can you advocate for us? These are important. And they do, they're very responsive. Other states I've worked in, I can call Chuck Schumer in New York, tell him blue in the face. He's not coming. He's not calling me back. So, you know, it's just a different level of, different level of access, put it that way. Nothing against Chuck Schumer, personally, just saying it's different.
I want to thank you. This is an amazing overview you've given us, and it's a three-dimensional chess game, so how do you keep it all straight?
Well, a lot of good work. Alyssa, I drive her crazy. She every time I come to the office, a tear starts to roll down her cheek. It's like, oh God, what are you doing? Stop, please stop.
What do you want?
She doesn't welcome me with open arms, that's for sure. But,
Poor
so,
Scott.
she does, she works hard. It's hard because all of these things too, once we get these grants, it's wonderful. But then the compliance pieces and the reporting and the single audit and keeping track of all of the requirements that the feds put into all of their, you know, all their bidding. It's just, it's a very difficult process. And it seems unnecessarily complex.
Yes.
And it's frustrating because they hold us to very strict standards as to when you can apply and how you can apply, but then they don't give you any sense of when they're gonna make decisions. So these things go open-ended, like some of these grants that we talked about have been 9 months, some of them up to almost a year, and no indication as to when they're gonna give you a decision, which is really frustrating.
How bad is the Bridge Street Bridge? How many more years do we have on that?
It's weight restricted. I would say it's not horrible, but it's certainly in a position where if we start bringing additional traffic through, once the depot is finished and once Vilas is finished, it will have to be repaired in order to carry the level of traffic that we think might be necessary.
Yeah.
And that opens up lots of other discussions about how do we want to
With the traffic.
keep trucks out of the square, and how do we want to try to, you know, good news, bad news, right? There'll certainly be more activity and more opportunity for people to come to the downtown, but it also has some real challenges to it too.
Yep.
So.
Yeah, and that bridge is going to be a very complex and challenging one to rebuild, I think, because of the site.
The
I mean,
location
if we
makes it
think
hard.
that Canal Street is bad, that's going to be worse.
I know.
Because you're gonna have people that are trying to get in the post office, not gonna be able to get in, let's get a walk down the sidewalk, because the parking place is gonna be gone, and, probably gonna be taking up that parking area over there for staging. You know, it's.
Yeah, it's
Not gonna be
definitely,
fun.
it's a more restricted on space,
Yeah,
and it's closer to the generating stations.
yeah,
You know,
and
it's
that's gonna be
right
the danger when they take
there.
there to park, that's the old one, that's gonna be.
Yeah, that is gonna be
You
the
didn't have
problem.
problems where we are now.
Yeah, that one's gonna be a real challenge, because it's so close to the intent.
Yeah.
And, you know, we're gonna have to work, again, when we get into FERC relicensing, we're gonna have to use, or we're gonna certainly need a lot of cooperation from the hydro. to make that happen, because there's no other way to do it.
Right.
So, all of these things are gonna be complex and expensive. I mean, you see the costs on just the Vilas and the Depot Bridge, you're looking at $35 million. If you add our train station in, that's approaching another $4 million. The money that we'll eventually put into the meeting house is probably in the neighborhood of $2 million. So this building, when we're all said and done with the membrane and all the other work that we're doing, is probably close to $1 million. So, you know, deferred maintenance is a bitch. It's expensive over time, and, you know, it's hard on, I appreciate the board's efforts at trying to catch up, because it's not easy. Like, these things take decades to get to this point. It's not like these decisions were made in the last 3 or 4 years. But you can see what it does in terms of cost and complexity, and it's really, it's a puzzle, sure.
So, more fun for classroom.
Yeah.
Okay, let's move on to letter of support for regional police initiative. There's a information packet from Wyndham
So,
County Sheriff.
the sheriff has been trying to put together a pilot project that he's looking for the legislature to help with some funds to see if they would help us do that specifically for our region. You know, we have sort of a unique issue here because how spread out we are in terms of population. You know, we're not the same. Obviously, there's policing issues all through the state of Vermont, but I think ours are a little more complicated just because of the fact of how we are set up. So I think his proposal is a good one, to see if there are some ways that we can look at this on a regional basis. I think it's helpful to have the legislature involved. We're not Chittenden County. We're not even Montpelier, you know, central Vermont. We just have different problems. And I don't think sometimes that the larger picture gets up into the state capital conversations. They don't quite see some of those distinctions. So I appreciate the efforts of the sheriff, and I think it would be in our best interest to try to participate in this process as much as we can going forward, to see if there's some opportunities here for regional solutions to some of our concerns. Our rural residents have been asking for more and more police-related activity and services. The sheriff has been very cooperative and helpful. Even though we have a very limited contract, they've been able to produce, based on the reporting that they do, very specific information that I've been able to distribute back to folks, which is helpful. I think sometimes just having the information, sometimes people's perception versus these were dates and times when there were people and this is what they were, you know, in your area, is helpful. Doesn't answer all the problems, I realize, but it's at least been helpful for me to be able to talk to people and give them some information that's concrete. And I think the contract that we have signed has been beneficial. This sort of takes that into a larger discussion, and this will be the first, I think, of many of the conversations we're going to have about regional services, whether it's EMS, whether it's police, a whole host of other issues.
So Scott, he's recommended a letter be sent, and would that come from the select board to our?
There's one attached to this.
I just drafted a quick one just to send one up. So it's just something that we can send forward.
Well, we need is a motion to.
So if you just do a motion to approve, then I'll send it off to the sheriff.
Are you gonna use that same letter you got there, change the date or something?
Yeah, I'll just change it up. Yep.
Okay, that being said, with no further discussion, can we get a motion just to, have the manager, draft the letter and sign it on behalf of the town?
I move that we authorize the manager to draft or send the letter that he has drafted to our legislative delegation for the town. Is that what it's going to?
I think the sheriff is gonna aggregate the letters and send them up to the legislature.
All right, so then this will go to the sheriff.
Can we get a second?
A second.
Okay, motion made and seconded. Any further discussion, questions? Seeing and hearing none, all those in favor would say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, nay. Motion carries. Move on to item 7, which is
Before you
conditions.
move on, so, does
what the sheriff has been doing with the contract, and will we get an update of that before we go into our discussions on our budget?
Yeah, I can do a total activity report for the entire time period if the board would like to see that, so.
One of your neighbors wrote to me for some reason, but I got information from Scott and sent it to her, and you probably know who that is.
So I can get into the reports and just come up with, where they were, dates and times, I can
Yeah.
print out one. So I will do that. We can do that for the meeting of the 5th, I'll just update that for that.
Okay, I think Bonnie Rupp explained there's a survey
Oh.
edition here that, what's gonna be happening, so I'll let them guys take the lead on that.
Yeah, so I gave everybody, that's a printout of the survey that will be online. The only difference is that I stuck a town seal on that. We have to pay an extra hundreds of dollars to put a logo on the survey, so we'll be on that. But that's exactly how the survey will read. You can see some are check boxes, some are yes and no, some are fields where people can, people comment. And as soon as everybody is totally happy with it, we can start going with getting it live. The only thing, we hit a glitch with the postcard. We wanted to send a postcard to every registered voter. And we've had some real struggles trying to get a list of registered voters with complete addresses. But we have an idea we got tonight from Melissa, that there must be such a list somewhere.
There has to be a list because we get ballots to the mail.
That's what she said, yeah.
Yeah, we've asked Kathleen a couple of times on this, and she sends us these lists that have no zip codes on them. And as you know,
Voter list is what they use a check out,
So,
check
yeah,
in, for voting.
there are 4 zip codes that has. You think of Saxon's River, some through Chester, some through Bellows Falls itself. Some people get their mail from Westminster, do they?
Yeah, the Hartley Hill area and that area, from Westminster.
So we've been trying to puzzle that out, but if we can get a real list that really has everybody's actual address, and, the post office box where they get their mail, we can get going on having the postcard printed and mailed. The timing I'd like to do is, when we know that postcard is going out, that's when we will put paper copies, like the ones you have there, at the library, at the senior center, and at town hall, for people that don't have internet access. And that's what we can start posting on all social media sites and get it on the town website. So it'd be good to kind of have this be as simultaneous as possible, so that people don't hear about it this month and then get a postcard next month and wind up taking it twice. So if we can get it all to happen sort of at the same time, that would be optimal. So the idea is just to see how many responses we get. And my understanding is the select board and the town manager can change the day and the time of the annual meeting, but we don't have the authority to move the voting on the warrants to the ballot. That has to be approved during an in-person meeting, right?
Right.
So my hope is that regardless of what our survey responses tell us, it will foment awareness among our voters that we need to do something, If you really want it to change, you've got to come to the next town meeting in person and vote on that.
Well, I started coming tonight
So this is the
to see the
thing.
town mechanics and work. So, I'm one of the people who've not been involved. And I know that this has been coming up, and I find myself wanting to complain about a couple of things, and instead of complaining, I figure I should contribute.
Thank you.
and come down and see how the mechanics work and get to know the people that we elect to do these things and to be a little more involved. So this is one of the exact reasons I'm here is
You know, if
to
you
be
have-
a part of it.
If you do have complaints, the easiest way to handle those is send an email or something to the manager, and let him know you got a problem, and then if he can't solve it, it'll come to here. So, and 9 times out of 10, he's got an answer. You may not like it, but he's got an answer.
It's easy to complain, it's,
Yeah,
you know,
that's right.
True.
it's a lot harder
We
to
don't want to put a
contribute,
lot
that's
more
why I'm
stuff
here.
on him, because if he asking for a raise again, we don't need to go through that, so.
No matter, as much as he deserves one.
Right.
Yeah, so,
That's not-
you know, the thing is, if you care about this, you've got to start to pay attention, you know? And we were aghast last year that less than 100 people were in this room to vote on the articles in the
That's
warrant.
certainly not the majority.
No,
Yeah,
not
yeah.
nearly.
3,600 registered voters, 3,700.
Right.
Yeah,
And it was that article I had read that, you know, led to me being here.
Yeah, and it's really, it's dangerous. It's a dangerous situation. A handful of crackpots, if there were.
Excuse me? Are you calling us to show up with crackpot? Well, we know where your votes are going.
And dominate the whole thing. Because we don't have participation. So people, you know, we're trying to find out, do you really not want to come? Or is it the wrong day? Is it the wrong time? Why aren't you coming? What are your thoughts? Because a group of us have to get together in person and vote to change it. Otherwise, we will forever be having these warrants determined by 25, 50, 75 people at the most.
It's the way
And
it
that's
used to be, I don't know how we
no
got to where we're at.
Huh?
It's the way it used to be, I don't know how we got to where we're at.
Voter apathy, basically. I mean, if you go to, the Union High School budget is a prime example. You go up there at the high school and they pass that budget that night at the budget. And if you, 20 people, I guarantee you, at the most have been at those meetings. Pass a $12 million budget for the high school. And nobody else shows up. And the only way you can vote on it, and because I've been tempted to get that voted on Australian ballot, and without any success going to the legislature, I finally gave up because they don't listen.
Right.
So, the only way you do it is vote down your local district budget, but that affects all the other schools in the town. Not just that, but that's the only way you can it, because when the budget's adopted at the high school, it's all assessed through all the different school districts, including Westminster, Rockingham, Grafton, and all the ones that belong to the high school. They all split up the money according to your population, so. But that's how they do it, like I say, I think the last time they had 15 people there, the last few meetings, $12 million.
So that's what we're trying to do, right? That's what
Yeah,
this is
it's
all about.
Yeah.
Get people to be aware how important it is to at least attend one meeting so you can vote on whether or not you want to keep it the way it is or change it. You know, personally, I like the in-person meetings, but only if people come. If people aren't coming, it's not a good idea.
So
I'm sorry.
I've drafted, you can see there's a text that you got of a postcard text, and that's signed by all of us on the board, so I want everyone to be comfortable with the wording here. And we want people to participate, and there are 4 different ways that people can participate. So we want to get as many responses as possible. Bonnie and I plan to present what comes back to us at the town meeting. So that's an important thing, so we have some data, instead of just anecdotes and opinions floating, or at least we have some idea. I mean, it's not gonna be great data, but it's gonna be better than nothing. So that's the plan, and so I hope everyone can look at this text, and are you comfortable with it? Okay.
Okay, good.
Stuck my name on it, even though I'm an idiot.
Well, we haven't printed it yet.
Crackpot, yeah.
We haven't.
There's a
Have
line
another cookie
on the
for
back.
me.
Yeah.
All right, so that's
This
that.
board has never had so much fun. Something's wrong here. Okay,
I'm gonna finish this.
so that's done. As I say, an educated voter is your best voter. And if you don't come to the meetings, I mean, look at what's here today. You're two people, 4 people. There's only 2 people and those are press
I was
on
horrified when
Zoom.
I came down here.
So, you know, then you don't know how many of them are
You mean
watching
for art?
that TV, watching.
I was surprised.
True.
Yeah, so it's,
Another suggestion for people is that at the minimum, you can at least read the minutes of the meeting
yeah,
afterwards.
you should.
And it's very brief, but it will give you at least a small
Yeah,
snapshot of
gives you an
what
idea.
happened in that
Okay.
meeting.
Then if you have questions, you need to come to the meeting and ask them.
Excellent.
Okay, done. Let's go, there is a, Scott passed out a big pamphlet here on the solar update for the lease, I think it
So if
is.
you remember, Novus is a company that we did the original solar lease with, and then I got a phone call from Kendall Sustainable Infrastructure, which apparently now has taken over the lease from Novus, which I guess they sell these things once they put together their projects. So they are now the ones that will be the people that will be doing the next round of the lease. They've got a couple of amendments that they've asked for, not in terms of area, but there are some renewal terms that they've asked for changes to that I think the board needs to talk about. And then a couple of other documents that they need to record as well with the lease. So I just explained to him that we would certainly bring it to you guys this evening. It was too late to try to do it for this meeting. And then we would talk again with him. He had the 7th, but it'd be on the 5th. So, just wanted to get this in your hands.
More bathroom bringing for you guys tonight. Go through that. and see if you have any questions.
A lot of legal,
Yeah,
yes.
it's kind of any things that you regard as problematic on the lease, the changes that.
Well, the one thing that bothers me is in the original lease, right, we have 3 options for renewal. 2 that are at their option plus 1 mutual renewal. And right now, they want to have all of them at the tenant's option, so none at the mutual. So I'm not sure that that's in our best interest at this point. I'm not sure why. They need to explain to me why that would be in our interest to have that.
And the financial piece remains the same.
Financial piece remains the same. So we have received our initial $50,000 payment, but the other payment terms from the other years going out are the same.
Okay.
So, but that's the one piece I think we do have to talk about.
So Attorney Ancudit, give us advice on this renewal.
I'd asked him to do the train station lease first, but then he will get this second.
Okay.
So, yes, we'll make sure that he goes through it as well.
And there is no action needed tonight, correct?
Just wanted to bring it to the board's attention and just make sure you have it.
At what point do they want a decision, or do
We'll bring it back on the 5th, so it's your next regularly scheduled meeting.
Okay, let's move along here to the review and approve orders, bills, and warrants. Take a motion, please.
Move to approve, orders, bills, and warrants. Second.
Motion made and seconded to approve orders, bills, and warrants. Any discussion, correction, anything? Seeing none, all those in favor would say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, nay. Motion carries. And they'll be coming around with signatures. Starting the other to my left. Agenda for December 5th, 2023 meeting.
So we'll have a couple of budget-specific items. We'll do the general fund. We'll have the highway department budget and the presentation, and the management report updated and a discussion. So we'll have that on. The activity report for the sheriff, which we added tonight. The solar lease update, which we added tonight. We'll give you an update on what's happening in the pit with the closure and some other issues at the pit. And then we will have at least 1 grant application for culverts for 121, the brick application, I believe is due by the 8th, so we'll have to have that on for the 5th.
So on the pit information, you're gonna go in an executive session, you need an executive session on that or no?
I would think we probably will have an executive
Yeah,
session
well, we discussed earlier today.
Yes.
Okay.
On the 5th.
on the 5th.
Okay.
Okay. Agenda items for the November 28th, next week, the
Yeah.
joint tri-board meeting.
Couple of things, I've asked Paul to come. There's been a lot of updates on the statewide level. If you remember, we talked about the statewide reappraisal process, and they were gonna do a report and get back to everybody. Well, the legislature sort of canned that whole process and are now going a different direction completely and going straight to statewide reappraisal. And it's kind of been a little bit of I think the board needs to understand what they're doing. And so VLCT has some information I'll share with you. I'm gonna ask Paul if he can come and give the board some updates, because it really is a substantial change in approach from the last time we spoke, and a little aggressive. So I think it would be in all of our interests to have that conversation on the 28th. We'll update the fire feasibility study where we are, some of the challenges we've had, and then hopefully have a schedule as to when we're gonna get the results and have conversations about that and the recommendations. The Wyndham Regional folks have been doing the sidewalk study for us. They are not gonna be ready for the meeting. I'd hope that they'd be able to present on the 28th. In talking with them this week, they're not gonna be at a point where they're ready to present. So we'll certainly talk about some of the general stuff about sidewalk and some of the general stuff that we've talked about with pavement, but we won't have their full study done, probably not until the first of the year now, from the information I got this week from them. So they're a little bit behind on that. And then Ridwick had asked to do a brief presentation, so we'll have them on there as well. So
What's the topic of their presentation?
I think it's an update since the last time we spoke about the housing, infill housing, and sort of that next steps on that.
Okay.
So those are the ones that I have for now.
All right, if anybody has anything else, they can zap me and myself or Scott, and we'll see if we can get it on either one of the two meetings agendas. Okay, I guess we're ready to go into other business. Elijah, we'll start with you.
Nothing with me.
Scott?
I went to the gathering, the VLCT gathering of select board members in Townsend a couple weeks ago.
Oh, you did?
Yeah, and it was really interesting to see what other towns are struggling with and some of the problems that we don't have that they do have. Really, there are some of those.
Oh, yeah.
That's good.
Everybody's got a different kind.
But it was great to hear, to connect with other select board members, just to get to know who they are. And the idea of Vermont towns operating as silos is, we gotta get beyond that. And so I think, Scott, you're doing a great initiative in cooperation on policing. We've got it with our bike head, grant. You've got it on Route 121 paving. So I think that's the way VLCT sees that as a really important way. So the fact that we're cooperating with Westminster, for example, is really a good thing and part of a trend. So.
Yeah, I know, when I was doing that work for the regional, when Ann Golick and I went for like 7 or 8 different towns and met their town managers and some of their select people. We've got problems with, some towns have bigger problems and a lot less to work with.
Right.
Yes.
We've got big problems where we've got a lot to work with here. We've got a lot of people, got a big budget. Some towns just, God, it's unimaginable how they even plow the roads,
Yeah. So that was great to ask for two things, like what are you really happy about for your town and what's the challenge? I said, we're happy they got a great manager.
Yeah.
That was the thing I said.
Yeah.
That was.
Don't spread that.
I know, they're gonna come and
Just
steal
trying
it.
to get away from us.
I know, and I said the challenge was that we have 3 fire departments for 5,200 people.
Yeah, that was the rules, those 2 eyebrows.
They were like, what?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, only thing I have is, I think they've opened 121 up both lanes now, for the holiday. They were moving stuff all over the place and trying to stop traffic and everything today, but I noticed everything, the lights are off, so it's a first straight run now, so that's good. Bonnie? Sue?
John, what's that? Thanks.
All right, that being said, there's no need for executive session, I would take it.
All good.
So that's the case, I'll take a motion to adjourn.
I move we adjourn.
Second?
A second.
All those in favor would say aye.
Aye.
We are done.
There's 2 cookies left.
Recording